have a clear advantage, and we don't want to lose it.
The EV mandate is gone for now, but we're seeing a real resurgence of Mark Carney's real agenda. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today, Mark Carney, in his press conference the other day, we're going to look at a few snippets there. We're going to compare some other clips here to his ministers. Something else that's happening with the Liberals is they're starting to rally around their environmental agenda. We thought this was going away. It's actually getting stronger. His net zero agenda, it's not going anywhere. Let's jump into this. Starting this one off, Kirk has an interesting graph here saying that Canada's Temporary Foreign Workers Program is mass immigrating some of the least educated people on earth to Canada. And that's what we see here. This blue is what we're looking at. This is less than high school educated. And we can see here, Temporary Foreign Worker Program per skill level, it was almost none for years. Back in 2022, started ramping it up. And look at this. We're getting highly uneducated people taking up all the jobs for Canada's youth. Doctor or engineer? Neither. The Liberals have destroyed the best immigration system on earth, which Canada used to have. And we used to have it with both Conservative and Liberal governments. Got this one here. Air Canada flight attendants massively reject wage offer, union says. They're offered a new contract, a tentative contract, 99.1% voting down the airline's wage offer. This is not done. This is not over. So Carney isn't out of the woods on this one yet. Moving ahead, we've got this one. Is the zero emissions vehicle mandate dead or merely sleeping? So this article coming from CBC, I bet you know where this is going. It says a lot is now riding on Carney's climate competitiveness strategy. I bet a bunch of people who voted for the Liberals, voted for Mark Carney, didn't even know that is his strategy.
How is it compatible to have both the development of conventional oil and have a transition?
In his announcement on Friday, he gave away a few nuggets that really just showed where he's going with this. But if we go down to the bottom of the article here, can the mandate be saved? What do you think the CBC thinks? There are many pathways to amending the mandate without abandoning it. So it goes on to talk about the lack of incentives in charging infrastructure as part of what's standing in the way of Canada keeping pace with other countries. EVs account for 21% of new car sales in the European Union last year. That might be more the reason why the federal government is doubling down on such efforts. It talks about different ways to structure selling vehicles if they're EVs, extending credits to plug-in hybrid vehicles and infrastructure, reevaluating tariffs on Chinese-made EVs. They're not going to do that. They're invested in the pipeline in Canada. They don't want this competitor here. Even though they claim it's all for the environment, it's only for the environment if they get to make money off of it for the environment. From his press conference, I didn't show this earlier, but listen to him talking about decarbonization.
The first thing is to say, from our perspective on climate competitiveness, is to develop the competitiveness of our industries everywhere from the resource sector through to manufacturing, through to services, so that Canadian businesses can compete. We can grow foreign markets. We can grow jobs and sustainable jobs here in Canada.
Which foreign markets want to have this climate check mark, the green leaf beside every single product? Germany? Which ones? If we go this route, the number of trading partners we'll have will fit on one hand. It'll probably be less than one hand. There'll be hardly any.
And in that regard, there's a series of measures that we're taking and will take. Starts from the tax system and works its way out so that the investments in decarbonization are happening here in Canada. You will see some elements of that coming with the major projects when those announcements are made as well, but there'll be a more comprehensive approach for climate competitiveness as part of our global industrial competitiveness strategy, and you'll see that in the...
Didn't Germany try this and pretty well crippled their economy? Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what happened. After Russia cut them off, they switched over to a green economy, and it has crippled them even further. And now they're backpedaling and want to use LNG as a transition fuel. So CBC offering a lot of solutions here. Of course they are. Meanwhile, Mark Carney, during his announcement, this is all he had for the $43 billion canola industry in Canada. 370 million canola incentives are missing the mark, says industry group president. Yeah, because it's $43 billion industry. Of course it's missing the mark. We can't just keep paying for incentives. Carney's got to get a deal with China and Donald Trump, but he's not going to, because he's not going to rock the boat with Xi Jinping, his business partner, and he's not going to work out a deal with Donald Trump because he needs Trump as the big bad boogeyman to win another election. Canadians got bamboozled with Donald Trump being the boogeyman, elbows up, and then winning the election. He can't have that Trump card go away. So before we get deeper into Mark Carney's net zero agenda that he is rolling out, first off, just listen to Pierre Poilievre talking about the summer of George, more Seinfeld references. This is absolutely stellar.
But this really has been, as I said yesterday, the Seinfeld summer for Mark Carney, a big show about nothing. You know, I think specifically about George Costanza. You remember George Costanza? He was a legend. George Costanza had this great episode where he had this fancy, high-paying job with a corner office, and he didn't do any work, like literally none, but he wanted to look busy. So he would storm up and down the hallways carrying file folders. He would leave the lights on in his car in front of the office building on the weekend, even though he wasn't there. He would yell into the phone, even though no one was on the other end of the line. And they kept paying him because he looked so busy. I have to admit, Mark Carney has looked really busy this summer. He's been flying off to Europe to sign declarations of intent that actually mean absolutely nothing. He's been holding roundtables with other politicians. You've seen politicians patting each other on the back, congratulating themselves on all the excellent meetings they've been holding. There have been letters written to ministers that then get leaked to media and are reported with great fanfare on front pages everywhere. My goodness, he's almost as busy and as useless as George Costanza. It has been a big show about nothing. Nothing is getting done under Mark Carney.
Yeah, nothing is getting done.
Everything is getting worse.
That's hilarious, and that's so on the mark. This episode is so funny. George running around swearing. They think he's like some hotshot is doing all this stuff. This is Mark Carney. The Liberals having a meltdown in this comment section because they know how true this is. Mark Carney has done nothing. You know, someone posting this, the LNG deal. Well, let's see what happens. Which companies are they going to pick? Because Mark Carney's invested in at least 10 LNG companies. Will he be enriched by this? Is this just an announcement that won't go anywhere? So moving back to Mark Carney, we've got this story coming out. A group of Liberal MPs are forming an environmental caucus to pressure Mark Carney to implement more anti-energy policies and other climate measures. Mark Carney doesn't need that. He's playing a little bit of the long game here because he knows how bad everything's got in Canada and it's all for climate change. Meanwhile, China's opening a new coal-fired power plant every week, actually up to 2 per week. We can't change the climate here in Canada. We have zero control. So all they're doing here is creating a new industry, which then they get on the ground floor and make money off of. Canadians are gullible. They fell for this. They have no idea what's going on. They voted for this guy hook, line, and sinker while him and his buddies here are going to make money off of it. The chart speaks for itself. Mark Carney's investments, all of this stuff, it all lines up with his green utopia here. All this stuff, carbon capture, net zero, net zero, net zero, all these different companies. His book, values, his entire ideology, the people he's hiring, he's bringing in like Dawn Farrell, up to $677,000 a year. She's going to get paid. She's tied with these other guys in Brookfield. Everything the guy does here lines up with his net zero agenda.
Looking forward, as was my then responsibility as governor of the Bank of England, looking forward and saying, wait a minute, there's massive financial risk on the horizon. And it's going to end up being closer than we think in terms of not just the physical manifestations of climate change, which quite frankly were easy to see, but really what we're seeing is the prospect of enormous stranded assets. If we transition, if we succeed, success is failure for some companies in this world on climate change. Enormous stranded assets if we succeed. But wait a minute, if we don't, then the world's heading to 3 or 4 degrees.
The guy created Glasgow Finance Alliance for net zero. He's the architect of this that's been rolled out to all the other companies. He's not like he's some guy that was along the pipeline of it. He's literally the architect of it. When you see stuff like this, where Oxfam found $41 billion unaccounted for with the World Bank, their accounting was so bad, so appalling. And of that, after I broke it all down, Foreign Affairs Canada sent $3.488 billion between the Trudeau years and now Mark Carney to the World Bank with zero receipts. This should be sending off red flags in every Canadian's mind. Mark Carney in this clip confirming the industrial carbon tax is not going anywhere.
Of GHG emissions, for example. We already have, and in future we will strengthen tax credits. The idea being to spur more investment in clean energies.
What's interesting is when he speaks in French, because he knows he's speaking to the Quebec Green crowd, he speaks in more detail because he knows it plays to that base.
Secondly,
le prix industriel de carbone.
We will be keeping the carbon industrial tax.
Le fonctionnement de ces marchés.
And we need to improve the operation of those markets. As I just said before, there will be a competitiveness strategy and policy in carbon taxation, at the same time, a nature strategy.
And that's his carbon credit system. His idea here is if a company, say in Canada, is making shoes and another one right next door is making shoes, but is capturing all of their pollution, initially the second company would be able to, say, sell their credits, or the first company would have to pay for credits to match the second company. But in the long term, he's saying that he's going to go around the world and find partners that only want to buy shoes that come from the second company that's eco and green. This is not going to happen. Countries around the world do not care about this. That's why I said you'd have less than, like 5 partners you'd find. Like Germany, like what other countries? The EU? We're going to do all our trading with the UK? This is a terrible strategy.
So we will be doing a lot and focusing on the outcome. The outcome meaning the competitiveness.
His competitiveness strategy here will tank Canada. We will be the biggest loser on planet Earth for doing this. Not just figuratively, but fiscally. We will be losing badly because of this. More companies will leave for the US. That's exactly what's going to happen. What industries does Carney think will be in Canada to support employment for millions of foreign workers? Who is going to feed the federal bank coffers? As Kirk replied here, the irony is that he is saying this while announcing pausing the EV sale mandates because they're too costly for industry and makes them uncompetitive. He even said that in the video. Carney doesn't make any sense, but he's just trying to get around this. He's trying to make this work because his entire life, he has a book written about this, is net zero. Canada doesn't need to roll out Mark Carney's agenda. And it's sad that so many people are going to lose their jobs, going to financially suffer because of it. His Brookfield shares is the benefactor. So Mark Carney has deviated away from his net zero agenda, bringing down the carbon tax to 0%, not eliminating it, pausing the EV mandate. I mean, look at all these car icons here. Brookfield is cornering different aspects of this market to make a lot of money off of it. He's not getting rid of it. And what you're going to see here is a lot of these liberals, they don't seem to understand his agenda too. They obviously have not seen my chart. So they're pushing back on Carney, thinking that he's abandoning the green climate agenda. We see the article here on CBC, Liberal MPs form environmental caucus. We've got a quote here. The efforts come as some MPs are quietly expressing concern that Mark Carney has relegated green initiatives to the background since coming to power. They don't understand what their own boss is doing here. When I started as a member of parliament, I noticed that there wasn't necessarily a caucus to discuss the environment. Newly elected MP Eric St. Pierre said in an interview with Radio Canada, together with Nova Scotia MP Shannon Medema, St. Pierre proposed to his colleagues that they would create a forum to discuss climate issues similar to those that already exist for women's and Indigenous issues. How about Canadians suffering, living in tents issues? Maybe create a caucus for that. How about the economy going down the toilet? You want to create a caucus for that too? It goes on to say here, people don't understand how someone who championed climate issues for over 15 years can suddenly become prime minister of a G7 country and stop talking about climate change. Not a word about it. What's going on? One Liberal MP said. They don't understand the long picture here. Mark Carney just can't roll out the net zero agenda tomorrow after Trudeau was getting drilled on it over and over and over. Pierre's main campaign was axe the tax, the carbon tax. Carney can't lean into that as his first thing. That's why he removed it as the first thing. He's trying to get that issue away from the dinner table where people are talking about it every night. He's still doing this agenda. He's just going in a roundabout way to do it because that's his only way of doing it. He can't just pick up where Trudeau left off.
Not just starting at the end state or, with green, but taking assets that are brown or beige or even olive and shifting them to green.
It's just shocking that these liberals have no idea what's going on here. Mr. Carney has had a strong environmental position in the past. We want to make sure that he remains true to his values, another Liberal MP said. And if you go to the bottom here, in a Leger poll published in July, only 4% of respondents ranked the environment as their top concern. 4%. This isn't a top concern in Canada. If we just compare this, we'll use this Abacus data that just came out. It's right here, 16% climate change in the environment. 16%. This shouldn't be the top thing that should be enshrining all of the policies of Canada if it's not a main issue for Canadians, if it's not a main priority. I mean, it shouldn't be a main priority, but they're bamboozling Canadians saying that this should be, even though we can't affect the climate. We can't. China can affect the climate. We can't. China's building a new coal-fired power plant every week, or 2 per week. So everything we do, even if we all became hippies and we're riding unicorns to work, it would still not affect the climate. What we need to be doing is selling our oil and gas and getting rich. And even if we wanted to do this climate utopia, well, look what Norway did. They got rich off of oil and gas. They created a sovereign wealth fund, and then they switched everyone over to EVs, but they have a very temperate climate despite them being more northern than us because the flows of the ocean, the warm waters come up from Africa, goes over to Norway. It actually keeps it very temperate there, and their entire country is about the size of Alberta. So when people use these comparisons, it's not apples to apples. Canada is huge and Canada is cold. Aren't the Americans pulling away from the green agenda? This doesn't make sense. It makes sense if you think about it from the perspective of this, where Mark Carney Carney will make a lot of money off of it. This has nothing to do with the prosperity of Canadians. It has everything to do with the financial well-being of Mark Carney. Let's go back over to his stocks here. Just briefly, if we look at his appendix here, the stocks he holds the greatest value in are the ones he self-administers under his RRSP. You can see here, self-administered RRSP holdings, one or more securities funds that would be considered controlled assets if held outside the plan. Shares of north of 60 advisors, so I haven't done a video on that. The ones with check marks are the ones I've done videos, and I link up the videos here, which you'll be able to share with your grandma or anyone else. So hopefully people can understand what this guy is doing. Shares of Stripe, I brought this up before on the channel. You've got Stripe here in purple. Mark Carney sat on the board from 2021 to 2025. Stripe is the company, if we move up here, who's a founding member and administrator of Frontier. Frontier created the carbon credit system, backed by all these big companies here. The carbon credit system, hokey pokey system, where companies can plant trees or do direct air capture and then create credits and then sell them to other companies, and then companies can feel good about themselves. So I bet you Mark Carney's investments in Stripe are enormous. We're not just talking millions, probably hundreds of millions of dollars. And I bet in his entire portfolio here, he's got hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, because nobody has this many stocks and carries like $100 of stock in Allstate Corp. Like, how much money does he have invested here? 1,000, 10,000, 100,000? Do you think Mark Carney's investing anything less than $50,000 per stock? Look at all these. The guy's got to be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I suspect he's probably got 100 million or so in Stripe alone. Not to mention he's got all these other ones here. Partner Value Investments, obviously Brookfield Corporation, Brookfield Asset Management, his incentive plan from Brookfield Global Transition Fund, that's his green fund he set up at Brookfield. Cultivo Land PBC, which I've done a video on there, as well as Watershed Technology. These are all green, climate, net zero agenda. It's very clear where everything's going to go here. He's not getting away from this. His whole life is based around this. All of his investments here that he self-administers are around this. So while he's investing in all this other stuff here, oil and gas, LNG, all of that, that's just a hedge because he knows that'll always go up in value. But he's trying to push things towards this because that's where he'll make the most money, is if he's able to control it. And how does he control it? If he gets control of a country like Canada, one that he hasn't even been a part of for the past many years, but it was the easiest one to bamboozle. So it's clear that Mark Carney's inner circle knows what's going on here, and they're in on it. We've got Industry Minister Jolie won't say if the federal climate targets are here to stay.
We have a clear advantage, and we don't want to lose it. That's why our climate plan is working, but there needs to be adaptations based on what we're going through in the economy.
What advantage? Nobody is knocking on our door saying, wow, you got the cleanest this, that, or the other. Let us buy more from you. Can you make more of that clean stuff? Nobody cares how the LNG was produced or the electricity produced. All they care is if you can stick it on a ship and send it over to their country and what price they're going to pay. They don't want this high price stuff that is exactly the same as the other stuff that was produced in a cheaper manner.
And, we need to make sure that we provide a form of predictability. We'll work with industries on this. But, I've been hearing the conservatives saying that the EV mandates are the reason why the auto sector is going badly. It's so disconnected from the reality. It is because of the decision of the White House that our auto sector is being targeted right now. And
you sure it isn't 10 years of terrible liberal policies that have put our country into disrepair and ruin? It's not that?
That businesses from, the D3, from Ford, GM, Stellantis to Honda and Toyota, whom I'm in contact constantly, are taking decisions by the hour on how they will continue to do business in Canada.
She is definitely in on this. She knows Mark Carney's agenda. I'm sure he spoke to her about what he's rolling out. And it's time to start digging into all of their assets, their shares. What is she invested in? All the closer inner circle. The problem is there's other ways around it. Give $1 million to your uncle and say, hey, why don't you go invest in this company over here? Have a good feeling about it. You can't track that stuff. What does a climate plan even mean? By the metric, you could claim plan is working. Are citizens of Canada receiving good value for money they spent to achieve these results? There's no measurable metrics, and that's what they like. They could measure how many new deals they're getting based on pushing greener products like greener LNG or greener electricity, but where's the data on that? They know the data's bad, so they don't track that stuff.